If you like this video, remember to subscribe and like. Guitar Collector Guy welcomes you to watch setting string height and intonation on a newly installed 6-saddle Telecaster bridge. The tools needed to complete the job. For this project, you're going to need a tuner, a No. 1 Phillips screwdriver, something to cut strings with, a .050 hex Allen wrench, something to measure your string height, and optionally something to measure the radius of your neck. An overview of the multi-purpose measurement gauge. I've grown accustomed to using this handy little Nomad string gauge. It has measurements in inches, metric, and 64ths, has a little chart for proper height by instrument type, and even has a pickup ruler. A quick reference to string height adjustment. If you turn the hex screws on the saddles counterclockwise, it'll lower the saddle. If you turn the screw clockwise, it'll raise the saddle. A quick reference to setting intonation. If you're adjusting your saddles for intonation, to adjust the saddle, if the note is sharp, move the saddle back. If the note is flat, move the saddle forward. Installing the new strings. Cutting the new strings to proper length. So the low E string I cut at about 2.5 pegs above, tuning pegs above. And the same thing for the low A string. Same thing with the low D string. I cut a little bit more off of the G, B, and E, finally ending up with the E string with only cutting off about 1 inch. Winding/tightening the new strings. Make sure you stretch your new strings before you tune. Make sure to spend a few minutes stretching the new strings. Otherwise, when you've tuned them without stretching them, you're going to find that the guitar most likely will not stay in tune. So it's a good practice to do it right from the get-go. First pass tuning. The key to having a successful experience, basically measuring your string height and your intonation, is to make sure that you always have a solid baseline of tuning, meaning that each string open is tuned properly, not sharp, not flat, but spot on to basically the note that it's supposed to be tuned to for that individual string. Measuring string height. One of the really cool things about the Nomad string gauge is that it basically has a chart on it that tells you all different types and ways that you could set your string height. And I just went with the most common, which is annotated with asterisk for an electric guitar, the low medium. Using the Nomad string gauge, I went with the suggested low to medium heights, which on the low E and the 3 low wound strings would be 1.50, and the high 3 strings would be 1.25. Adjusting your individual saddle height. If you turn the hex screws on the saddles counterclockwise, it'll lower the saddle. If you turn the screw clockwise, it'll raise the saddle. Remembering the measurements that I just took on the 6 strings, on each of the saddles then, I adjust the individual strings to make up for the variance that I found in the measurements. Adjusting the saddle height for each of the saddles is just an iterative process where you basically adjust the saddle height, measure it, and then adjust. And you just keep doing this until you get the exact measurement that you're looking for on the gauge for each of the strings. Remember to retune after adjusting your saddle height. It's important to retune the guitar after you've adjusted all of the saddle strings, because if you've made any adjustments to any of the saddles, the guitar will be out of tune and will need to be retuned again. Measuring your guitar's intonation. The process of measuring intonation on a guitar requires all 6 strings open be tuned properly not sharp, not flat. Then you go, and normally what I do is I will fret each of the strings at both the 5th and the 12th fret, watching the tuning. I'm looking to see if there's a sharp, spot on, or flat. All three of those tell me what to do. Adjusting the intonation for each string. If you're adjusting your saddles for intonation, to adjust a saddle, if the note is sharp, move the saddle back. If the note is flat, move the saddle forward. It's an iterative process. Measure, adjust, tune, and repeat. Adjusting for intonation is a very iterative and involved and, to be honest with you, lengthy process. It's something you just have to be patient with doing. Basically what you're looking to do is to fret it, the 5th and the 12th fret, primarily the 12th fret. You're wanting to make sure that the 12th fret, the tuning is not sharp, not flat, but spot on the exact of what the open string version of that string is. And you adjust this by moving the saddles either backwards or forward. A little quick saying to remember is flat forward, sharp back. I know that flat and forward both start with F, so that means then that if I'm measuring the string at the 12th fret and I see that it's sharp, then I need to move the saddle backwards. If I see that it's measuring flat, then I need to actually push the saddle forward. The job is done. Now to take final measurements. A couple different views of the final setup bridge. Measuring final strength height. When I'm all done setting the intonation and the saddle heights, I like to take my measurements all over again just to make sure I haven't accidentally done something. So again, I check the string height on each of the 6 strings to see if I need to do any cleanup adjustments. This is an optional stage, but does your bridge have the same radius as your neck? This is an optional step, but if you take a neck radius gauge and set it on the strings, just setting it there, and then pluck each string, none of the strings should play clearly. They should actually be muted. This is a simple way of testing whether or not the strings actually are adjusted height-wise properly in alignment with the curvature of your neck.